Unit 8, problem post number 3, multiplying polynomials. Be sure to fill out your pre-score, number 1 through 5, assessing your ability to multiply polynomials before watching this video. Our guest of honor for this problem post will be a knight with a fire sword. The pen could be mightier than the sword, but is it mightier than a fire sword? I don't know. I guess I'll have to make that determination after he practices some math with us. All right, Mr. Knight. Okay, problem number 1, we have a monomial being multiplied by a polynomial. There's a lot going on here in this example because I have 3 different variables, so I need to keep track of 3 exponents and make sure I'm only adding the exponents of the like variables. So we'll start out by distributing this negative 3x to the third yz to the first term 2x y squared z. I'll multiply the numbers like normal. Negative 3 times 2 will give me a negative 6. X to the third times x. I'll add the exponents. 3 plus 1 is 4. Y times y squared. Adding the exponents. 1 plus 2 is 3. And then z times z. 1 and 1 make 2, so z squared. Now I'll distribute to the next term, 5xy. Negative 3 times positive 5 is a negative 15. X to the third times x. X to the fourth. Y to the first times y. Y squared. And z doesn't have a z to combine with, so he'll just come along for the ride. Last distribution, negative 3 times negative 2. We have a negative times a negative. That gives us a positive. 3 times 2 is 6. X to the third times x. X to the fourth. Z to the first times z to the first. Z squared. Looks like I forgot about my y though, so I'm going to make sure I don't forget about my y, even though I don't have anything to multiply by here. So the y will come along. I'm going to keep it in alphabetical order, and z squared will be on the end. All right, number 2, we have a binomial times a binomial. When I'm multiplying 2 polynomials together, I'm going to make sure I multiply everything in the first group of parentheses by everything in the second group of parentheses. So I'll start out with this first term in the first group of parentheses, the x, and I'm going to multiply it by everything in the second group of parentheses. X times x is x squared. X times negative 4, negative 4x. Now it's time for the 3. 3 times x will be a 3x, and 3 times negative 4 will be a negative 12. Positive times negative, negative. We also need to check our resulting polynomial. Looks like we have some like terms here, a negative 4x and a positive 3x. They can combine to a negative 1x. I don't need to write the 1, it's implied, so I'll just say negative x and minus 12. And that's our final answer, this guy. Okay, number 3, we have a similar situation where we're multiplying 2 binomials, but we also have this first coefficient of 2. This 2 I'm going to distribute just into this first group of parentheses. So we'll start out by doing that, and then the 2 resulting binomials will multiply just like we did in number 2. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Now these 2 products that I got, 2x and negative 4, this is still all groups together because this entire quantity is being multiplied by x minus 8. So I'm going to be sure to keep these grouped in parentheses. That way I know I need to distribute both the 2x and the minus 4, not just the 4. So just like in number 2, I'm going to multiply everything in the first group of parentheses by everything in the second group of parentheses. Start with my 2x. 2x times x will give me 2x to the third. 2x times negative 8 will give me negative 16x. Now it's time for the negative 4. Negative 4 times x, minus 4x. Minus 4 times minus 8 will be a positive, because negative times negative is a positive, and 4 times 8 is 32. check my terms. Looks like I got some like terms, negative 16x and negative 4x. So they will combine to a negative 20x. And there's my final answer. Number 4 is a bit tricky because it only shows one binomial, but it's being squared. Now I'm not allowed to simply square both of these terms. I need to think of what squared actually is saying. Squared means I'm multiplying this quantity by itself. So I'm actually going to write out x plus 9 again right next to itself being multiplied. Now I can see I have two binomials, meaning I need to use my distributive property and distribute everything in this first group of parentheses to everything in the second group of parentheses. So x times x will be x squared. X times 9 will be 9x. Now it's time for the 9. 9 times x is another 9x. And 9 times 9 is 81. So it was very important that I wrote this out next to itself, because if I didn't, if I just tried to distribute this squared, I'd be missing out on these two middle 9x terms, which will combine to an 18x. So x squared plus 18x plus 81 will be my answer here. Okay, moving on to the back, we have a binomial times a trinomial. So I'm going to use the same exact technique. I'm going to multiply everything in the first group of parentheses by everything in the second group of parentheses. So starting with the 2x times 3x squared. 2 times 3 is 6. X times x squared is x to the third. 2x times negative 7x would be a negative 14x squared. 2x times 2, I'm just going to multiply the numbers here and get a 4, and the x will come along for the ride. Now it's time for the 5. Multiply the 5 by the 3x squared. 5 times 3 is 15. Then 5 times negative 7x. 5 times negative 7 will be a negative 35. And the x will come along for the ride. And finally, 5 times 2 is a positive 10. I'll check my resulting expression. It looks like I have a bunch of like terms here. Starting with the highest degree, 6x to the third. I see nothing else is to the third power, so that will stay out front, 6x to the third. Next, I'll look at my squared terms. I have a negative 14x squared and a positive 15x squared. 15 minus 14 is 1, so I'll just make that a plus x squared. No need to write the 1. My x terms, I have a positive 4x and a negative 35x. 4 minus 35 is negative 31, so that'll be minus 31x. And finally, we have this positive 10. Nothing else to combine with that, so it'll just stay positive 10. And there's my final answer. Number 6 follows the very same process again. It's just a bit more tedious now because we have a trinomial being multiplied by a trinomial, right? 3 terms and 3 terms. So we're going to have to distribute all 3 of these terms to all 3 of these terms. It's going to create a very large expression, and then we'll combine like terms. And let's get started, and we'll see where it takes us. So starting with the x squared term, x squared times x squared will be x to the 4th. X squared times negative 4x will be minus 4x to the 3rd. Remember, I'm adding these exponents here. I know this is an exponent of 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. And x squared times 8 will just be plus 8x squared. First term is done. Let's move on to the second one. I have a minus sign here, so I'm going to be aware of that as I'm multiplying it through. Negative x times x squared will be minus x to the 3rd, right? X to the first power, 1 and 2 is 3. Negative x times negative 4x. Now I have a negative times a negative, which will result in a positive. X times x is x squared, so I'll have positive 4x squared. Last one for the x, negative x times 8 will be a minus 8x. Okay, on to the third term, we have this 2. The 2 also needs to be multiplied by each term. 2 times x squared will be a plus 2x squared. 2 times negative 4x will be a minus 8x. And 2 times 8 will be plus 16. Wow, so we have quite a long expression here. We're going to have a bunch of like terms that we're going to need to combine. So let's start with our highest degree. It looks like to the 4th power. It's the largest degree. Nothing else is to the 4th power. So x to the 4th will be our leading term. Moving on to the terms to the 3rd power, we have negative 4x to the 3rd, negative x to the 3rd. Negative 4 minus 1, negative 5. So that's a negative 5x to the 3rd. Squared terms, I have a positive 8x, positive 4x squared, and a positive 2x squared. So 8 plus 4 is 12, plus another 2 would be 14. So that would be 14x squared. 1, 2, 3. X terms, negative 8x and another negative 8x. Negative 8 minus 8 is negative 16. So that'll be a negative 16x. And finally, we have our constant, positive 16. Nothing to combine with there, so that'll just come on to the end. And there's our final answer. All like terms have been collected. Our final example, it looks like we have a binomial being multiplied by a trinomial, but at second glance we see that this binomial is actually being squared. So I'm going to have to write this out and distribute the x plus 3 to another x plus 3 first, and then we can combine. So I'm going to start by representing this squared by writing out x plus 3 again right next to it. So wow, it looks like we're actually multiplying 3 expressions together. I'll start with the 2 binomials. And when I carry out this multiplication, I'm just going to be multiplying these first 2 binomials together. I'm going to leave this third trinomial on its own, and it'll just come down after I'm done multiplying. Multiply the first 2 terms together. X times x is x squared. X times 3 will be a 3x. 3 times x will be another 3x. And 3 times 3 will be 9. I'm going to contain all of this in parentheses and then rewrite my trinomial on the ends, because I know this trinomial is being multiplied by the entire quantity of this product, x plus 3 and x plus 3. I have some like terms here, x plus 3x and 3x. They can combine to a 6x. And I'm also going to be sure to rewrite my trinomial again. So after I've handled this squared binomial here, it looks like I have the product of 2 trinomials. So this is going to be just like we did in number 6. So we have to multiply everything in this first group of parentheses by everything in the second group of parentheses. So we'll start that off. X squared times x squared will be x to the 4th. X squared times 2x will be 2x to the 3rd. X squared times 5 will be 5x squared. Time for the 6x. 6x times x squared will be 6x to the 3rd. 6x times 2x will be 12x squared. And 6x times 5 will be a 30x. Lastly, we have the 9. 9 times x squared will be 9x squared. 9 times 2x will be 18x. And 9 times 5 is 45. Alright, is your fire sword mightier than that multiplication, Mr. Fire Sword Knight? I don't know. We got to combine like terms first. Maybe we can figure it out. So we got x to the 4th power. That's our largest degree. Then we got the 3rd power terms. 2x to the 3rd, positive 6x to the third, and that's it. So 2 and 6 is 8, so that'll be plus 8x to the third. We've got a 5x squared, 12x squared, and a 9x squared. 5 and 12 is 17. 17 and 9 make 26. So that'll be plus 26x squared. Then we have our x terms, 30 and 18. 30 plus 18 is 48. So we'll have 48x. And finally, the constant 45 will just come down with nothing else to combine with it. So there's my final answer after a very long process. But as long as we're taking our time and making sure we're showing all our work, we should get the right answer and eliminate small errors. Don't forget to write your post score, number 1 through 5, assessing your ability to multiply polynomials after watching this video.